What if I told you that the United States government secretly paid a hotel mogul from Las Vegas $22 million of your taxpayer money to hunt UFOs? And that same guy had already quietly poured over $350 million of his own cash into building a private space station. And that a piece of his technology right now, as you watch this, is physically bolted onto the International Space Station orbiting 250 miles above your head. His name is Robert Bigelow. And the story of how he built, funded, collapsed, and left a permanent mark on the space industry is one of the most jaw-dropping private finance stories you have never heard. Buckle up, because this is where the Pentagon, UFOs, the United States Senate, and cold, hard cash collide. Robert Thomas Bigelow was born in 1944 in Las Vegas. Not a rocket scientist, not a NASA engineer, a hotel guy. He built Budget Suites of America, an affordable extended stay hotel chain, and turned it into a serious cash machine. We are talking the kind of profits that fund rockets. But Bigelow had a parallel obsession his whole life: outer space, and not just the science. He genuinely believed extraterrestrials had visited Earth. He said so publicly on television multiple times. Most billionaires keep that kind of thing quiet. Bigelow leaned in. In 1999, he took his hotel profits and founded Bigelow Aerospace, a manufacturing company in North Las Vegas, Nevada. The mission: build expandable, inflatable space habitats. Think of them like pop-up tents, but for astronauts in orbit. Here's the finance lesson hiding in plain sight. Bigelow did not raise venture capital. He did not do an IPO. He did not bring in private equity. He self-funded the entire operation. That is called bootstrapping. And he did it to the tune of over $350 million of his own personal fortune. By 2013 alone, he had invested $250 million. He told reporters he was prepared to go as high as $500 million to see his vision through. That is not just passion. That is conviction backed by capital allocation. Now let us talk about what Bigelow actually built, because this is where it gets really interesting from an investor's perspective. Back in the late 1990s, NASA had a brilliant idea called TransHab, an inflatable habitat designed for deep space missions, possibly even Mars. The concept was genius. Instead of launching heavy metal tubes into orbit, you launch a compact deflated module, then expand it once you're in space. More volume, less weight, lower launch cost. But in the year 2000, Congress canceled the TransHab program. Budget cuts. The technology was shelved. Bigelow saw an opportunity. In 2003, he bought the patent license directly from NASA, acquiring the intellectual property rights to that abandoned technology for what insiders described as a relatively modest sum, then spent the next decade improving it. This right here is a classic private equity and M&A move. Find undervalued IP that a larger institution has discarded, acquire the rights, and develop it yourself. Bigelow added proprietary layers of material called Vectren, twice as strong as Kevlar, to the design. He ran his own tests, and he built something NASA had given up on. In 2006 and 2007, he launched two unmanned prototype modules, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, into actual orbit. Then in 2016, he launched the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module, the beam, to the International Space Station aboard a SpaceX Dragon rocket. Originally approved for a 2-year test, it is still there today, still attached, still functioning. A dead company's hardware is floating in space right now. Let that sink in. Now here is where the story takes a sharp left turn. In 2008, the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, issued a classified contract solicitation. The program was called the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program. It would later become known to the public as AATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The stated goal: study potential breakthrough technology in future aerospace weapon systems. The unstated goal, according to insiders, investigative journalists, and declassified documents, investigate UFOs. The program was initiated at the urging of Senator Harry Reid, at the time the Senate Majority Leader from Nevada, who had a long-standing personal friendship with Robert Bigelow, already publicly known for funding UFO research privately. The DIA awarded the contract to a new entity Bigelow registered on January 28, 2008, Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, or BASS. The initial contract value was $10 million, with total program funding reaching $22 million over 5 years. Now, was this a sweetheart deal? Senator Reid said publicly it was a competitive bid. It was put out for bid, and he did the best. But here's a fact worth noting. BASS was the sole bidder for the contract. The sole bidder on a $22 million government contract that your taxes paid for. BASS hired scientists, engineers, security contractors, and intelligence analysts. They investigated reported UFO encounters from both military and civilian sources and generated 38 official scientific research reports covering topics ranging from hypersonic vehicle detection to warp drives to the manipulation of extra dimensions. The program was defunded in 2010 and BASS was wound down by 2012. Two completely separate stories. One extraordinarily strange entrepreneur, Let us pull back and look at this purely through a finance lens, because this is where you can actually learn something powerful. Step 1. Bigelow built a cash-generating business, Budget Suites of America. This is your base capital, your operating cash flow. He did not need outside investors because he had his own engine. Step 2. He used those profits to fund research and development in a completely different sector. This is what we call capital redeployment, taking profits from one industry and betting them on another. It is the same move Warren Buffett made at Berkshire Hathaway, using insurance profits to buy businesses. Step 3. He identified abandoned intellectual property, NASA's canceled TransHab patents, and acquired the license. In M&A terms, this is a classic IP acquisition play. You do not need to invent something new. You just need to find value that someone else threw away. Step 4. He secured government contracts. In finance, government revenue is the gold standard for predictability. The DIA paid him $22 million. NASA paid him for beam development. These contracts gave him non-dilutive funding, meaning he did not have to give up any equity to get the cash. Step 5. He built real hardware. Genesis 1, Genesis 2, and Beam all launched to orbit, transforming him from a speculative startup founder into a proven contractor with actual flight history. The tragedy. When NASA solicited bids for permanent commercial modules on the ISS in 2019, Bigelow passed. He told reporters the numbers just did not work without more government subsidy. That contract went to Axiom Space instead, and then COVID hit. On March 20th, 2020, Nevada's governor ordered all non-essential businesses to close. 3 days later, on March 23rd, Bigelow Aerospace laid off their entire workforce. 88 people, gone, effective immediately. Sources close to the company called it a perfect storm of problems. The pandemic was the final blow, but the structural issues had been building for years. No new commercial customers, a failed bid for the NASA module contract, and no outside investment to cushion the fall. In a company funded entirely by one man's personal fortune, there was no private equity firm to restructure the balance sheet, no institutional investor to inject emergency capital, no board of directors to force a strategic pivot. As of today, Bigelow Aerospace is considered defunct, and yet his hardware is still in orbit. The beam is still bolted to the ISS, a legacy floating above the atmosphere of a company that no longer exists on Earth. That is one of the most surreal sentences in the history of private enterprise. So what do you take from this? 5 lessons every entrepreneur and investor needs to hear. Lesson 1. Build a cash engine first. Bigelow's hotel business paid for everything. Before you fund a moonshot, make sure you have a money machine that does not require the moonshot to work. Lesson 2. Buy abandoned IP. The most valuable intellectual property in the world is not always protected by the biggest players. And NASA gave up on inflatable habitats. Bigelow bought the license and turned it into hardware that is in space right now. Always ask, what has a giant institution thrown away that still has value? Lesson 3. Government contracts are a funding strategy. Non-dilutive, predictable, prestigious. If your company can solve a government problem, that contract can replace the need for venture capital entirely. Lesson 4. Know your concentration risk. Bigelow's fatal flaw was one founder, one wallet, one vote. When the environment turned hostile, there was no lifeline. Lesson 5. Build something that outlives the business. Bigelow Aerospace is dead. The beam module is in orbit. Your work can outlast your company. That is the ultimate legacy play. Robert Bigelow was not just a hotel guy who got weird about UFOs. He was a self-funded entrepreneur who acquired NASA's abandoned technology, won secret Pentagon contracts, and put hardware on the International Space Station. He bet on the future, and in many ways, he was right. He was just early and underfunded at the end. The question for you is, what is the technology that someone bigger than you has already given up on? What is the contract that nobody else is bidding on? What is the abandoned IP with your name on it? Because the real conquerors of corporate giants do not wait for permission. Hit subscribe for more stories like this, and drop a comment below. Do you think the government's UFO research was worth $22 million of taxpayer money? See you on the next one.